can you turn on your video and on?
Hey guys, how are you? Victor here.
Hey, Victor.
Hey,
Uh,
Victor.
you can always call a meeting to attention and start, and then when you get full quorum, you can at that time call it to order if you'd like.
We have a quorum right now, so
Okay, great.
we'll call it to order.
Um,
But am I correct in thinking that all the committee members need to have their camera on? Is that right?
you are 100% correct.
Okay.
If you are a board member, you have to have your camera on to be counted in attendance. Thank you.
Great. So, Mateen, do you want to
Mhm.
call it to order?
All right, calling to order at 6:45 precisely. All right. Well, just first thing I'm gonna do while I have this on, I'm gonna be multitasking here. I'm gonna put um, okay, I'm gonna put a copy of the meeting minutes here. Click. That way everybody has a copy of it. So I'm just adding the minutes from January, which huge shout out to Juan for putting this together. It definitely helped me and David as we were tackling some of the other issues this past month. We also sent a copy of the January minutes. I think we have one additional amendment to the agenda. Um, for oh no, sorry, that's presentation. Sorry. But yeah, no, I have Amsterdam for Hancock. Okay. Now that I've added January minutes, everybody should have received a copy of the agenda via email. If not, I'll also post that as well. On the agenda item for today, we have 5 items. One is looking at 1727. One is the next is for Hancock Place and deed modification, followed by updates on 620 West 153rd Street, updates from a community planning fellow, as well as update on upcoming zoning 101 training.
Yeah, we actually do have an agenda amendment, which is Andres. I'm going to butcher your last name, and I apologize for this. Orejuela.
That was pretty good.
So what would have been perfect?
Orejuela.
Orejuela.
Well,
Yeah,
Okay.
that was perfect though, David.
Okay, Andres is going to has asked to make a presentation regarding his HFTC co-op. So that'll be under presentation announcements.
perfect. All right. All those in favor of adopting the agenda? Am I at that point?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right. Then do I have a second?
Second,
You're muted.
second.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Moved. All those in favor? Perfect. All right. So, do you want to kick us off, David, or should I just start ahead with 1727?
Well, did we adopt the minutes? I'm not sure we did.
Sorry. Now that I've added the January minutes and as folks are reviewing, are folks okay with the meeting minutes? Do we have any discussion, any amendments, any changes? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes of January?
So moved.
All right, all those in favor? Perfect. All right. So then I don't have the agenda order in front of me, but I believe right after that we have introductions. So good evening, everyone. My name is Mateen Sarsi. I'm a co-chair here, Committee Board 9's Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee, and I'm joined by, I'm going to pass the ball to each person, starting with David.
I'm David Ratner, and I am the other co-chair of the Housing, Land Use, and Zoning Committee. Rhea, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Rhea McDonald, and I am a new member of this committee.
And I think Juan, you're the other person, the other member of the committee. Do you want to
Can you hear
introduce
me?
yourself? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Juan Colmenares. Been in the committee 3 years. I've been a resident of Harlem since 1993. I lived in Compton since then, and I've been teaching in Harlem my whole adult life. That's it.
Juan, can we ask you to turn your camera on?
I don't know how to do it, man, but I'm here. I never miss a meeting.
I'm okay with that. If you're okay with that, David.
Yeah, I'm okay if Victor's okay.
Need to figure that out at some point, Juan. That is a requirement of all board members. We can talk about it, but you need to be on camera, all right? So we'll figure that out for you. Excuse you for tonight, but from here forward, please be on camera.
Fair enough.
So I know that we also have Audrey Walks with us from Department of City Planning. I don't know if there are any other governmental representatives who are on this call. Maybe if there are, you could identify yourself. And thank you, Audrey, for attending.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, we also want to recognize some of our public members. Liz, I see, is here with us.
Hey everyone, Liz Whitetakis. I am a public member of Housing, Land Use, and Zoning. I've been a public member and a regular member on and off since 2010. I live in a HDFC co-op on Common Avenue, and glad to be sitting inside in my nice warm apartment tonight.
I hear that. So before we move on to presentation, the one thing I wanted to drop in the chat for everyone is going to be just a list of like community alerts in terms of like events and things that are happening that is available for homeowners, tenants, realtors, things of that nature. And so these are all events and things that are happening within the month of February. The first thing that I did want to point out, just because it was brought up at the last month's meeting, is I've included the information to apply to join the community board. The applications have been released and they are going to be due on Friday, February 27th at 5 p.m. On everything that you're going to see on the CB9 community alert, you'll see not only the listing of events, but when it's happening, as well as links to get you to the either to register for the events or to see the overall event page for that particular item. So you'll see everything from Department of Finance to HPD, as well as other partners may be interested. In addition, I also put down the next Community Board 9 General Board meeting, which is going to be Thursday, February 19th. And I've also included the website. So folks are able to go onto the website, be able to join any meeting through those links. So with that being said, I will open the floor to Mr. Orihuela.
Thank you so much. I hadn't realized that I'd start us off. Can I share my screen? I prepared like a brief set of photos for you guys to help sort of introduce my request tonight.
Right on. Yeah, you should be good to share.
Okay, let me just make sure I have the right screen here. Okay. Okay, I see it now. Thank you. 1 second. Uh, okay. This should be good. Can you see the slideshow there? Yeah. Okay. So, hi everyone. It's good to see all of you. So nice to see so many familiar faces. I have before you a topic that I don't always bring here. This is about my HDFC co-op. So in front of you, you'll see two photos. One on the right of 471 West 145th and 473 from 1940. I live at 473, which is my co-op. The photos from 1940, the buildings are from 1890. And so this is, how do I do this? Oh God. Oh, if I can learn to use the slideshow. Okay. This is the building today, more or less. There have been some changes. And it actually is a thriving HDFC. We have a community of families, individuals, and we have some commercial spaces at the bottom, one of which is occupied. There's a really interesting history to the former owner of the building that intersects with organization around demanding better conditions for tenants and the gruesome death of Bruce Bailey. It's all recounted. It also gets into like deep city corruption. There was a book published called The Brass Wall, which I recommend to all of you, about the landowners who had properties from West 135th to 155th. But let me just give you a quick history of the building. So after the former owner basically gave up the property because he was sent to jail, the tenants and organized and remodeled with assistance from UHAB to become an HDFC. In 2013, when I moved in, the HDFC was completed. I like to think that matters a lot, probably doesn't. And that there was an HPD regulatory agreement to which the co-op agreed. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today. Because of shareholders leaving, accruing arrears, court cases slowed because of the pandemic, the corporation lost 3 out of 18 units. And at the same time that the corporation was sort of managing this crisis in its finances, it's our mortgage note holder, well, not our note holder, excuse me, the administrator of our mortgage, CPC, Community Preservation Corporation, raised our monthly escrows by about 100%. So we began to accrue arrears. Now, this is not a sad story in that sense. Our arrears are to date as of this month. I have been on the board for the past 18 months, 2 years maybe. I've been working incredibly hard to get some sales done. However, we have one sale that remains, Unit 17. And I just want to give you a sense of what the costs associated for this sale are. As an HDFC, we have obviously an affordable maintenance. So the shareholder arrears for this unit are at approximately $75,000. We had to have an auction because the shareholder refused to sign over the shares to the corporation. There's a lot there, but we'll just leave it at that. The eviction costs were about $5,000, and of course we had to renovate the unit in order to make it saleable. So our total approximate costs are about $89,000 for the unit. What's the problem? Well, if you look here on the left, you have a photo of our updated sales schedule. So this is the sales schedule to which the corporation agreed at the time of conversion with HPD. Our sales price for a 1-bedroom unit, which is Unit 17, in the year 13, which is the year we're in, 2026, from the signing of the regulatory agreement, would be $66,175, right? So essentially we would be losing money if we were to complete this sale today. Obviously, this is a problem for our future stability. We have capital projects, we have to maintain affordability, we have to plan for the future of the building. The proposal is to request a one-time exemption from the regulatory agreement in sales price to maintain affordable housing in 473 United so that we can cover our costs. What I am here to do is to request a letter of support from Community Board 9, beginning with the Housing and Land Use Committee. Obviously, I've been involved for a long time with this committee. I'm very interested in questions of land use. I'm intimately connected to the board and the management of the finances, governance, physical facility of the property. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm very confident that if we were to receive this exemption, we would be put on a path that would allow us to maintain an affordable home for every single one of the people living here and for future residents. And I'd like to think that it would be a benefit to the entire Hamilton Heights community. So that's really what I'm here to say. Thanks for letting me present.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is really great, and I really like that how you went into the history of it, because it shows the overall history of how a lot of these HDFCs even came together in the first place, and how home ownership is really, really should be community based. So I really appreciate you showing this.
Thank you.
If it's possible to send us kind of like some of the information, like background information and overview and stuff that we would need to put the content together, or even if you have a template that you could share with us, we're more than happy to start looking at that and start adding our flair to it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have some questions, Andres.
Sure.
You had said that there was an eviction proceeding. Was it an eviction or a foreclosure? I mean, this was a co-op owner, right?
Correct. So the owner was evicted. However, there was no foreclosure done at the time of eviction. Because the people on the board at the time didn't realize and had sort of engaged with the shareholder in conversations about signing over the shares. And also because our finances were just so tight, we could not proceed with a separate action, which was the non-judicial foreclosure, which was completed. And I should have probably mentioned that. So thank you for asking about this, David. We completed the non-judicial foreclosure in December of 2025. So now we own the shares and we have the apartment, we have the unit empty also.
You weren't required to do a foreclosure sale, an auction?
Yes, we did the auction and we
Oh, you
purchased
bought it. You
we
purchased it.
purchased it ourselves.
see.
Right. So one
I
of the
see.
things that our attorney was helpful about was sort of indicating to us that, in an HDFC auction, you rarely get a bidder because of the
Right.
because of
Makes-
the restrictions on resale price for
And-
HDFCs.
Hey, may I ask you who your attorney is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to recommend him as much as possible. The firm is actually Anderson Law, and the attorney was Gregory Burns. They've been phenomenal. This is where UHAB has actually been very good too. Our monitor at UHAB, Jay Crespo, recommended them, and Anderson and Gregory Byrne are listed at the UHAB website, and they work with a lot of HDFCs, including the HDFC at 148th and Broadway. The three HDFCs in that one building on 148th and Broadway.
And just one last question, and you may not know the answer to this. Do you know where the provision is in the statute for this exemption, this one-time exemption?
Well, it's in the regulatory agreement itself. In the regulatory agreement, and I don't have the exact language, I could send that to you, but there is sort of a caveat that says everything in this regulatory agreement can be changed or exempted or
Yeah, that's fine. Would you send that to me? I'd be interested in seeing what it says.
And just and to kind of follow up on the sort of point behind that, I think is that Gregory, who is the attorney who was going to help us draft a letter to HPD, and Jay, who is our monitor, each of them has seen in different ways exemptions to the regulatory agreement. So they're not guaranteed, and we hope that by garnering support from the community board and from other local government organizations that we will be able to get ours, but we're not sure, right?
I said one last question, but I realized there's one more, which is,
It's okay.
are there any timing issues here that we should know about?
No, I think we'd like to get this sale done, but there's no hard deadline as far as I can tell.
Okay, so if you send us the materials and kind of a draft or whatever of the letter, if we take it up the next meeting, that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I'll be here.
Andres, so the regulatory agreement is with HPD. When did you sign that regulatory agreement?
Well, it was in 2013 because our HDFC became an HDFC through the third party transfer program. The HDFC was property of the sponsor, and when the property passed and the property in the corporation passed back to the corporation itself, and 473 was incorporated as its own entity rather than 473 West 145th Street HDFC. The regulatory agreement went into effect in 2013. The money had already been provided a few years earlier in order to begin the renovations.
Right. I mean, we signed a regulatory agreement with our HDFC, but it was earlier than yours by at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that stipulation. And just to point it out to David and Mateen that I wonder how prevalent that is in more recent regulatory agreements. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, no, same.
And obviously we have the largest share of HDFCs in New York and in our neighborhood.
And just to be clear, the stipulation is the stipulation that allows exemptions to the regulatory agreement, or is it the stipulations on sales prices in that kind of schedule?
The stipulation to sales prices.
Yeah, and so, look, I have a lot of things to say about HPAD, but I think one of the things that the people at HPD do very well, and I love city planning much more, Audrey, one of the things that people at HPD do very well is to really craft the regulatory agreement for each one they enter into. So for each building, each property, had we not experienced this pandemic, had the HPD, even the corporation, been able to sort of navigate the intricacies of non-judicial foreclosure a bit easier, maybe we wouldn't have to make this request. But I do think it's appropriate now. And I haven't seen our sales schedule is really interesting too, because there were two versions of it. One was even lower, but it made absolutely no sense. And so you have filed another one. And so the schedule of sales is but it's something that we really have to think about.
Because my understanding of HDSCs is that they are meant to be income restricted, not sale restricted. And so that's the first time I've ever seen that. And I've lived here for a while, certainly being around April and hearing about HDFCs before I owned. I've never seen that before.
My guess is that a lot of other HDFCs, more recent HDFCs, but no, I hear you too. I think it's another challenge that we face in some ways. And I think it's sort of, I mean, this is an HDFC conversation, but here we are at housing, land use, and zoning. It sets up this difference between HDFCs, right? So you have like, I think what, I mean, even this was a conversation that I had with April a couple of times, right? Like, there are HDFCs that have already entered into a regulatory agreement and yet still face all of the issues that, or many of the issues that.
When I told her that I had an accepted offer here, she said, "What's the address again?" And I told her, and she shook her head at me.
Oh,
Said they have a regulatory agreement, and then I was like, "What does that mean?"
yeah. She was very much, yeah, she had strong opinions on those.
Yeah, she did, but it was so funny. She just, I mean, my building is well known, and she knew exactly. Yeah, as soon as I said that to her, but I don't regret it.
Yeah, no.
I see a hand up here, Damien, sorry.
Disappeared.
Sorry, it's Tiffany. I can't change
Oh, okay.
the name on the screen. Anyway, no, I was just gonna say that yes, I've also heard of HDFCs that do have sale restrictions, but they tend to be the newer ones that HPD put out there. That's it. And great presentation.
Hi, this is Kate. I have a question. Can I ask it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hi, I live in an HDFC as well in the neighborhood. We do not have a regulatory agreement. And I'm just wondering, does this mean that like you can't even negotiate with them? You can't go back to the drawing board? It's a contract, right? So I would imagine that contracts can be negotiated or can be updated or amended. Have you tried that? Are they amenable to that? Or is this a 30-year contract that's it, you're locked into?
No, that's essentially what I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do here, and that's what I'm presenting about tonight. This is our effort
That's
to
just a
begin.
one-time exception. It's not an amendment to your contract where you would have more flexibility in the future. Right.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. That this would be a one-time exemption for this sale. As I understand it, there are different ways to go about it, so that it would be a one-time. Well, I should say it would be a permanent exemption for this particular unit, or it would be a one-time exemption for this particular sale. I think we'd have to kind of have that conversation with HPD to see how they think it would go. But to your point, we have to make the case to HPD. We have to bring it to them. We sort of have to have this negotiation with them. In the future, we may have to do it again. And if I can find that paragraph in the regulatory agreement that I'm going to send to David, then I'm happy to. Then it should be something we could do again. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by.
Yeah, no, I only say that because we have, in my HDFC, we have run into significant financial problems as a result of delayed, deferred maintenance. And we have just an incredible amount of work that needs to be done in our physical infrastructure. And if you ever run into those problems and you have to negotiate every time you need to take out a loan or do any kind of, major physical infrastructure on the building. I mean, Con Ed turned off our gas pipes because there was a big problem under the street that had nothing to do with our maintenance, but it was gas pipes were down for 4 years, and then we had to gas pipe the entire building. That wasn't something we had any control over. So those kinds of expenses are obscene, and to have to negotiate that then with HPD each time, I think would be detrimental to your building. So I would, maybe work on this exception, but then try and figure out a way to make it something that would, be more beneficial to you going forward, if that's at all possible. But I understand HPD to be kind of locked in.
Yeah, no, that's a great recommendation. And you said your name is Kate.
Yes, my name is Kate Glynn. I'm happy to exchange information with you.
Sure, Kate.
I'll
Okay,
chat
well,
you directly.
Andres, maybe you can do that in the chat.
Yep, we'll do.
Okay.
We'll do.
So, Tina, I'm just wondering whether Audrey, and I see Jose is here also, Jose Trucios from DCP. whether you have any presentation or announcements or anything that you want to discuss with the committee.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So we had talked about scheduling a zoning 101 and land use ULURP 101. Is that, just to confirm, is that's the agenda item we're on, or updates?
Yeah,
from
that's
September?
fine.
Okay. And so I think the last time we spoke, we had mentioned wanting to find a date in March, possibly a Saturday. So um, is that still on the table?
Well, we definitely need to pick a date, and I think we did ask whether a Saturday would be available.
Mm-hmm. That would work for me. So if there's, if there's a Saturday next month that works for you, that would be great. HPD has also indicated that they might like to join. And I believe, let me just pull up my email here. I believe they have availability on the following Saturdays, the 14th and the 21st, and the 28th, but with the 14th and the 21st being preferred days, if that works for your committee. But Jose and I are free all of those Saturdays.
That's great. Should we take a vote on this, Mateen? Maybe a show of hands as to who's available. And well, I mean, I think it's going to be a committee vote, but I think it would be good to see anybody who's interested
Yeah.
weighing in on this. So if you want to, if you turn on your camera, and Juan, we'll
Yeah.
just have to ask you what your feelings are. But so can we have a show of hands as to people who prefer the 14th? I don't, yeah, okay, Victor, I see your hand. I don't think I see anybody else raising their hand. All right. Victor, you only get one vote, sorry. And who would be in favor of the 21st?
Let's see how it's going here. Okay.
Oh, Teresa, you're on. Teresa, can you turn your camera on?
Pretty flexible. I can attend that too. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, for me, I was thinking the 21st only because the general board meeting is like a few days before, so it even gives
Okay.
us a good chance to like,
Okay.
you know,
Juan is indicating he's in favor of it. So, Teresa, how about you? What's your choice? You're muted. You're muted, Teresa.
The 21st is good for me. Next month?
Okay. Okay.
yeah, next month.
March.
All right,
Yeah.
let me look at my calendar. Hold on.
Okay. Rhea, did you vote? I can't.
21st is good for me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Looks like
The
21st. There's a
21st is
lot of
good,
them.
David.
Okay, sounds good. Great, Teresa. So 21st looks like it, unless somebody wants to vote for the 28th, which was anybody want to vote for the 28th? Okay. All right. So I think the 21st has it.
Great. Thanks
So
so
thank you.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey.
Yes, really.
This.
Yeah,
And
of course.
we will have to figure out a time, right? So
Yes. CB9, and additionally on the time, it will be key and important to send kind of specific topics that we would like to discuss on this. As you know, we have already some templates that we are trying to update with new information, given the complexity between zoning, ULARP, resources, what DCP does, or how to access different information. There's a lot of information that we can present. We have been, trying to either split presentations and trainings to community boards in different sessions,
Yeah.
or give a, kind of quick overview of a lot of the materials. But it kind of depends on what, best for the community. And, I'm working with Audrey on this, and definitely.
Jose, we had spoken to the board a little while ago regarding the training, and I think at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was wanted a general overview for the board, as Jose was saying, and then also specific focus on environmental review, city charter changes that have to do with land use. And I think I have a note here about City of Yes, but if that
Yep.
has changed or you want to focus on different things, up to you, discuss here, or we can talk offline.
When do you need this information by?
At least
Maybe 2 weeks in advance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think, Matisse? Should we open it up for discussion here, or should we put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
I would say just because we have some other topics of conversation that I know are going to take a little bit of time. Kind of want to perhaps move that to a like a offline discussion.
Sure.
But I mean, Audrey has the right ones. Like, I mean, we have zoning, City of Yes, charter amendments. I mean, the only other two potential topics I could think of that may be relevant would be like the Manhattan Plan and ULURP.
Yeah, let me say, by the way, and I was going to raise this later on in the meeting, that I believe that Youth has sent us a link for training on the charter amendments. That's on February. You have to go back and take a look at this.
Oh, I think it's the 23rd.
Yeah, so there is that. Also, I've been in touch with Joy Rezer
Oh, great.
at HPD, who said she's putting together something on the charter amendments.
Fantastic.
So I'm just wondering whether it would, we should use those resources.
Yeah. She and I have also been in touch. And so if they have resources on the charter, that would be great. We'll collaborate and make sure it's something that's timely and relevant for the board and informative. So
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and people should think about what they're interested in. And we'll have a discussion at that point and get back to you and let you know what the consensus is. But thank you so much
Great.
for all the work you guys have been doing on this.
Of course, our pleasure, and looking forward to chatting more, and certainly looking forward to this training on the 21st of March.
Great.
Right on. Perfect. I think there was somebody who wanted to speak regarding, I'm sorry, I'm pulling this up right here, regarding 472 West 147th Street. Is it possible if Mango Williams, if you're able to speak a little bit more on this?
Yes, I can. So, hi, it's wonderful to be here. And my organization, we've been looking into, reactivating abandoned buildings. And we saw this one that it was owned by the city. So we thought it was like a perfect place to start. And we've been drawing up like research plans about the building and just making everything kind of more organized about it. So it's been abandoned since 1985. It's a walk-up multifamily. It was owned by a private company, but then it got transferred to the city in 1985, July, because of in-rem tax foreclosure. So the building value is now worth less than the land value itself currently.
Damn.
And there's nothing going on with the building, and there hasn't been anything, and there's no plans for construction. There's like a ton of violations that's going on. So I'm just wondering about what possibility does like my organization or like any organization have in collaboration with anyone to kind of get this building going and get something happening there.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry, I missed the address in the beginning.
It's 472 West 147th Street. It's also referred to as 1753 Amsterdam Avenue. I could put in that.
David, I think this is the Till building, 1753. And so I think one of the things that, because I've looked into this building before. Sorry, Monk, I didn't mean to interrupt. Till is tenant interim lease.
Okay.
So what that would mean was that at the time of foreclosure, the building had people living in it, tenants. And they agreed to a deal with the city where they would give up their rent regulated apartments in exchange for the city repairing the building, and then they would take it over as a co-op. And so the city over the years has moved people out of buildings and told them they would rehabilitate them and then just not rehabilitated them. So I remember going through some paperwork on this building when we were also looking in the area at 1763 Amsterdam and these other places. And I believe this was a Till. It would be worth reaching out to the Till Coalition to find out if this building, the people who were relocated, are they still an active tenants association? Are they involved with the building? Because they do have a legal claim to return because they were promised the building as a co-op functionally.
Thank you.
Mega, what organization do you represent?
It's a small organization. It's called Gia's Coop. So our goal is just to make the world based more on cooperatives and how that's lined up. So like making businesses more worker owned and making the community more community owned, just like that.
Yeah.
And
Well, just to kind of reemphasize something Barry said, I mean, I don't think I think you have to figure out whether there are people who are part of this Till program, because before any of these units can be rented after rehabilitation, they may have rights to move into those units. So there could be a conflict if they're not notified and given some kind of rights here.
am I able to just like call Till, or how do I get in contact with them?
Barry, you mentioned the Till Coalition. Barry, are you still there?
Yep, sorry, in transit. So the Till Coalition is a voluntary coalition of these buildings. The other party would be HPD, which has the obligation to restore the building. And they are theoretically supposed to maintain the contact list for the tenant association for the building. I say theoretically because their record keeping has historically not been fantastic. But so the Till Coalition and HPD, and I can provide some connection there.
Thank you so much.
Barry, will you be able to do that through the chat, or is there some other way you want to handle this?
Yeah, Ms. Williams, if you'd like to put your contact information in the chat, I can reach out directly and connect you.
Great, thank you, Barry, and thank you, Ms. Williams, for alerting us on this.
No, wait, David, are we all remote today?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Good to know. I am changing my.
I think he got into a train tunnel.
Okay. Well, maybe I think we covered that.
Yeah.
Ms. Williams, is there anything else that you want to add or?
Well, I guess I could ask about the next steps. So once I get in contact with once I'm hypothetically able to get in contact with the people who have a claim to the building, what would I be able to do then? Like, could I just get them to sign something so that we could get this moving, or?
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that the Teal Coalition that Barry's talking about is gonna have some of that guidance. Me, I'm unfamiliar with this particular topic, so I'm kind of gonna lend that expertise on with the coalition. But my guess is if he's connecting you to the coalition, it's gonna be to get that guidance. What I will do is I'll put in my contact information. That way, if after you speak to them, you want to be connected with us as well.
Of
You know,
course.
that way you're able to kind of give us an update and we could kind of coordinate with you.
Yes, more support, the better.
Right on. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will, sorry, I will just add that these buildings, have been stuck in limbo for a long time. But HPD did approve a $500,000 per unit budget to do these buildings. And so I know they've been meeting with some of the TAs. So again, I'll connect you, Ms. Williams, with the group and try to find out if this building, where in the sort of timeline it is to be rehabilitated.
That's so interesting that they have the budget to fix these buildings and they just choose not to. Fascinating.
Oh, we won't get into the 40-year saga that brought us here.
Exactly.
More than fair. All right.
Alright.
So before we close out and move on to our new business, do we have any additional announcements before we move on?
Should I talk about 620 now or later?
620 West 153rd Street?
Yeah. So sorry, I just had one update on that, which was that I talked to the Jumani Williams comms director on Sunday. And I told him the whole situation, and he said that he would talk to a bunch of people in the office about it. It was at church and unofficial, so he wasn't like
Yeah.
promising anything, but I just described to him, he's like, yeah, we'd love to try and get affordable units out of a developer. So he's going to talk to some people in the office and see what he can do, including,
Yeah.
I don't know, he didn't know, and I didn't know who from the public advocate's office comes to CB9, but he said
He's you're talking about Curtis Young, right?
no.
Oh, okay. Because I've been in
Kevin,
touch with Curtis Young from Jumani Williams' office, and he said he
Kevin
was gonna,
Fagan. Okay.
he
But
said he
if
was
you're
going to be at the meeting tonight, so I'm a little surprised that he's not here. So who were you talking to?
Kevin Fagan, his
Kevin
comms
Fagan.
director.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Curtis Young is the community affairs. He's the one who comes from
Mhm.
the office. Okay. Well. But yeah, nothing more than that.
Okay, well,
But
yeah,
he seemed receptive
great.
broadly.
Great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. All right. Well, I think since we're on 620, let's continue with that. Did you want to touch up on this one?
yeah, so 620 West 153rd Street, just for anybody who doesn't know, is a building that was built, I guess it got its temporary certificate of occupancy in 2023. It is it's a 28-story building that was mistakenly built 14 stories above the legal limit under the zoning resolution. The developer filed incorrect plans with the Department of Buildings. And the Buildings Department looked at it and approved the plans. And after the building got its temporary certificate of occupancy and was more or less full of tenants, a perceptive member of the community realized that the zoning resolution did not allow this building to be more than 14 stories, notified the Department of Buildings, who then sent a letter of intent to revoke the permit and I guess the TC of O. The developer then went to the Board of Standard Appeals for a variance. The community board, their regulations, which require notice to the community board because we get to make a recommendation on that variance application. And we found out about it months after we should have. The owner didn't properly notify us. All correspondence was supposed to be directed to Victor, and they never did that. And all the emails were supposed to be directed to him, and they never sent them. So they never notified us properly the application or of the hearing or of subsequently filed documents. Nonetheless, I asked and we did, nonetheless, we did submit a recommendation after we found out about this from a presentation the developer made at one of our meetings. I was in touch with with counsel to the BSA, asked them to open it up so that we could put in further comments because we weren't served with all these notices and documents. So far, they have refused to do that. I actually spoke with the assistant director just a couple of days ago, and she said they're still talking about it, but I don't have a great deal of hope. The BSA, this is a little bit out of order, but the BSA took a vote on December 8th to grant the variance, and since then, they have been working to finalize the written determination. And once they do that and file it, then there will be a 30-day period in which a challenge via an Article 78 proceeding can be brought. Last time we were talking about this, we were trying to look for people who might be able and interested in bringing such a proceeding because it's quite expensive proceeding. It would be prohibitively expensive for the community board to hire a lawyer to do this. I talk with Karen Asner, who was suggested as somebody who might be willing to do it pro bono. For various reasons, she's unable to do it. Been in touch with New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, sent them a email. I haven't heard back from them. I've done some outreach to various politicians. As Rhea and I were discussing, I've reached out to Jumaane Williams. We've also reached out to the new Manhattan Borough President's Office. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I had a really interesting and good conversation with Wayne Benjamin, who's I believe on this, who's here and is Wayne, is it Community Board 8? Is that correct? You
No, I chair land use for Community Board 12 to your
12, I'm sorry, apologies for that. And he suggested that we reach out as well to our assembly person or the assembly person for that district, which is Al Taylor. And I guess is our state Senate person. It's
Cordell Clear, I believe.
yeah, okay, Cordell Clare. So those are two things that need to be done. I've actually tried to contact people at the New York Times to see if they're interested in picking up this particular case. And I think Audrey, if you're still on the call, I'm intending to send something to you. Mateen suggested that I put together something in the nature of a legal brief, so it'd be a little bit more formal, and I'm working on that now. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I'm not getting a great deal of traction, quite frankly. But this is, I think this is an important issue, not just for Community Board 9. This is a case where the developer is claiming that it reasonably and in good faith relied on a wrongly issued building permit from the Department of Buildings. And the case law on this appears to be very clear that you can't invoke this reasonable reliance doctrine if you had constructive notice that the permits were in fact wrongly issued. And constructive notice is a legal term, which means if there was a law that clearly was on the books at the time and you should have been aware of it, then you had constructive notice. Here, it's a complicated case, but there's no question that there was a very, very clear section of the zoning resolution that said on this exact zoning lot, it was prohibited from building a building more than 105 feet in height, and the building that was built is 284 feet in height. I am going away. I'm going to be away out of the country starting on Saturday, so I'm trying to get as much done as I can before that. And I mean, I'm hoping that it's going to take the BSA more time to get this thing finalized, because then the 30-day clock for an appeal starts to run. So that's my report. If anybody has any good suggestions about what I might do that I haven't been doing already, I'm very happy to hear them.
David,
Yeah.
I would just say, I know James Barron, who writes the New York Today for the Times. And we would need to sit and probably strategize about what the pitch is to him. Because I mean, yeah, it would have to be a little bit more than just about this and, issues with zoning. I don't know.
Well, the pitch, I think, in that particular realm is if this happened anywhere other than a neighborhood like Harlem, if it happened in, you know, the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side, um, it would have been on the front page of the Times a long time ago, and there would have been 30 lawsuits. I mean, just the idea that a development occurred that is, you know, 14 floors above its legal height is news in and of itself. And I guess the fact that the BSA does not appear to be willing to enforce the law, or, you know, that might be a bridge too far for a
Right.
newspaper to
Well,
report, but
I can reach out to James.
that would be great.
I know him fairly well.
I'm gonna send you uh, as soon as I get it finished, a copy of this kind of legal memorandum, which really I think is pretty detailed, and and I think it explains why, on a policy level, this is such a disastrous decision. Um, and I'll send it to Barry. Ria's going to look at it, which we discussed. Send it to Barry as well for comment, and for whatever use you can make of it.
I think we have a hand from Ewan.
Yeah, hi, thank you. The building is not in the historic district, but I'm thinking that it might be worth your while to reach out to the Historic Districts Council or to the Greenwich Village
Landmark, yeah.
Preservation
Right.
Andrew Berman, because they must have dealt with similar situations, you know, at some point, especially in Greenwich Village, the Greenwich Village Preservation Society. And you might be able to get some legal references from them in terms of lawyers that they've dealt with. I just think they're just so much advanced in terms of situation like this and filing lawsuits, and have been successful, you know, on several.
I mean, honestly, I have a limited amount of time between now and Saturday, but that's a good suggestion, and if I can, I will.
Okay.
Berman,
Maybe
thank you.
Liz, do you know Andrew Berman and at all?
You know, I actually don't know Andrew. We're sort of running the same circles, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, I've only communicated with him by email, but I will send you his contact information, David.
That would be,
Yeah.
that
And
would save some
yeah,
time.
I mean, Barry put in the comment that there's parallels to the project on the Upper West Side. So that was the one at Amsterdam and 70th Street, with all the lawsuits. And I don't remember if they took part of that building down.
I think they did. I think
Yeah.
they did
No,
take part
no,
of it down.
they didn't. They didn't. It was
it was
the judge was overruled. It was
Right.
overturned upon appeal. So I can't remember his name. Frank. The first judge ruled that they had to remove the 20 stories, and then that was overturned on appeal. And actually, one of the attorneys who worked on that case, I don't know if you know him, David. I think he's a neighbor. Is Chuck Weinstock. But I can send you his number. He's usually very gregarious, especially about these kinds of things. So I think that would be fine. And also, there's someone else who used to work at the New York City Law Department and has been a sort of pro bono attorney in these kind of matters. John Lobier. I also think the angle might be like opening up a lens into the BSA, which from all accounts is like, I don't know, very sort of arcane and highly dysfunctional, which is, you know, saying quite a bit.
I would agree with that, but I think that's that's too complicated. To be honest.
Yeah.
But I am just shocked with my interactions with them. It's amazing.
I tried to watch one of their meetings recently on YouTube and it just wasn't, yeah, it wasn't worth watching. But so I can send you that in an
Okay.
email. I'll send you Chuck and John's contacts. They've been
Okay.
really helpful in the past.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And just to be honest here, I mean, as I say, my time is limited, and my first priorities are going to be finishing this memorandum, hopefully being able to reach out to the politicians that I mentioned before, and then look because Wayne, I had, as I said, I had a discussion with Wayne, and I think he was very correct in saying that this is really a political issue. And that's the best way to try and, it's the best bang for the buck, as it were. So that just to be clear. But thank you, everyone, for these suggestions.
Right on.
Has the council
Awesome.
member, have you written to, I have to ask.
No, I haven't, and I thought it was Sean, but it's not. I think it's Al Taylor, right, Gene?
Well, no, Al
Al
Taylor's
Taylor on the state
No, I'm
side.
sorry.
Yeah.
So is it
Is it
Sean.
Sean?
It would be Sean.
so is there any
Yeah.
point to reaching out to Sean?
I mean, we
Yes.
should do it just
Put 'em
to
on,
have
yeah,
that
put 'em on
paper
notice.
trail.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, well, somebody's going to need to tell me how to go about doing that.
I could reach out to him. And
Okay.
I'll CC you and stuff. but-
Okay, appreciate it.
I would include Victor too, Mateen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I think we've gotten similar questions from the public advocates folks, and I think before we say anything, it's probably good to have that. Right on. Okay. But so I'm gonna backtrack. I'm gonna go into 1727 Amsterdam. So I know at the current moment we're waiting on the 18th, I believe. Audrey, please correct me if I'm wrong. To hear I guess like a decision from city planning on this particular project. Um, one of the things that they had asked after the public hearing was they sent a few questions to the community board. Now I was already working on responding only because I did a preview of my own performance and I'm realizing how new I am to public speaking. And so I submitted revised testimony, particularly on a question where when I was asked if I would be willing to support more additional units for supportive housing, I said yes, but it was really because of the way the program is designed, not because I was supportive of that particular funding model. And so that was something I wanted to touch base upon. And in doing so, I also looked at some of the other questions that were asked, and I submitted a response on behalf of the board. I'm going to put a copy of that here. That way it's available to everyone. And it essentially, here, pull up my notes. So we were looking at a few things in this. So in this case, some of the questions that were being asked of us was around financial feasibility, looking at alternative zoning in terms of requesting for technical evidence on why we're looking for an R8 upzoning. They asked about the official board timeline in terms of when the community board first requested for the upzoning. They asked for a fair share analysis, and then there was a particular question to me from Commissioner Benjamin about UDAP designation. And so, kind of going through this, I mean, I will say I took this particular thing on as somebody with a background in programs, And so I kind of looked at this from a programmatic standpoint, only because that's generally how government puts these things together. And so, in terms of financial feasibility, I mean, one of the things that I was kind of pointing out was the fact that the current supportive housing model or the loan program is specifically designed to be infeasible no matter what we were going to request. It was a 60% cap on the number of supportive housing units. And so every time, when they presented to city planning and they presented, how they added a few more units, it was just a few more units that was getting closer to that 60%, not that they were ever going to give us more than that. And because the funding model is designed that way, anything that would suggest otherwise would be infeasible because that's how the program is designed. And so I kind of went a little bit on that. And then kind of presenting other options in which would be feasible under the community plan, which there is a term sheet which HPD has for new construction funds, in which the ELA option, that's the extremely low and low income option. Essentially, this would not only give Community Board 9 the required, kind of like proposed solutions that we were looking at in terms of restoring healthcare space, putting in a commercial space for a community supermarket, the introduction of additional 1, 2, 3 family units. This particular funding option does cover everything that the community board is asking for. The problem is, upon looking at the financial statements of BRC, they are very heavily relying upon subsidy, particularly the supportive housing subsidy, in which they already dominate. And so for BRC, because they're heavily subsidized by this, there's no incentive for them to try to change their funding model so that they're specifically leveraging hard debt. Part of the problem is because you're working with low income folks, whatever monies that they would receive in terms of operating funds is going to be low. So anything that's going to come from that is going to just supplement their operations. So it's subsidy upon subsidy. And because the supportive housing program restricts them from increasing the number of other units, because it then takes away from their tax credits, it makes the whole project look infeasible no matter what we were going to propose in the first place. And I pointed that out. In terms of looking at the alternative zoning, I kind of had to look at architectural expertise, only because I'm not an architect. And you do see different architecture firms, particularly around City of Yes, that have already started to present potential recommendations as to what buildings could look like under, using the zoning requirements or using the new policy zoning requirements. And it's just showing, and you'll see it even on the testimony, there's a table that just kind of shows the difference between what the upzoning would look like under the community plan versus what is currently being proposed, and just how much opportunity is lost, specifically because nobody's seeking to create this particular space to its most usable potential. In terms of the fair share analysis, actually it used the controller's audit. There was a controller audit in 2023 that specifically uses data to show that community boards 10 and 11 are the most inundated sites for any kind of social service facilities in the city. And because CB9 being its next door neighbor, we receive a huge flow from that as well. And so we are also highly on that particular list of highly inundated locations. Just doing a check, and you'll even see a table on the amended testimony that'll show not only that within a 1.5 areas, there's not only a sizable amount of these facilities, but within just half a mile, you're looking at more than half that was proposed, that's showing within the original 1.5 mile radius. And so, it's just showing that we're responding to these questions in a way that's showing that not only have we done our homework, but folks even before us have done their homework, and folks before them have done their homework, just to show that, you know, at the end of the day, we're not asking for something crazy. We're not asking for something ridiculous. These are programs that currently exist, and that was the push for there. Barry, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, Mateen, I appreciate your really thorough analysis and thank you for putting that together for the community board. I think that one of the things that it's worth really foot stomping here and just underscoring for everyone is I think that it really matters the mix of supportive housing qualified populations that are in a particular project, right? Because that dictates the type and level and intensity of supportive services that they need. And so what we've seen really good success with are models with a kind of blended blend of different types of qualifying supportive housing populations. And the reason I say that is because, you know, you mentioned ELA tax credits earlier, and while it's a different funding stream, in many cases, supportive housing, you know, for populations that mostly just need case management services to make sure that they stay connected to benefits like housing vouchers and food stamps and, you know, ACS vouchers. It is functionally extremely low income housing with case management on top. But, you know, chronically homeless families, homeless veterans, youth exiting foster care don't necessarily need the same kind of intensive services that serious mental illness, substance use disorder populations would need. And I think that when people were asked about this at the public testimony, and they began talking about like drug treatment centers and other things, I don't think the commissioners really like understood why that came up. But the reason is because we weren't thinking specifically about supportive housing as supportive housing. We were thinking about supportive housing in terms of the other intensive services that the stated population would need and how those services are already over concentrated in our district. So I think that's a
Did we lose you, Barry? I think we,
Yeah, you cut off at the last.
yeah. Barry, you back?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I was just saying that, you know, not all supportive housing looks like this. And in fact, this is a very bad example of supportive housing. And I don't want us to lose sight of that when we talk about whether or not the community board supports or opposes supportive housing, because good supportive housing looks very, very different than this. And we should support that. So that's just my point I want to underscore is I think the concern from the community stems from the type of additional intensive services that the population would need that were not proposed to be offered on site, right? On site, they would just have case management, but they never went into any detail around like where the populations would get the additional services that they clearly need to manage their mental health or substance use disorder concerns. So sorry, I'm being long-winded. I don't know if I'm being clear, but that was just something I think it's worth emphasizing is, you know, we talk about supportive housing, but like supportive housing projects don't normally look like this in our neighborhood.
No, that's a good point.
Barry, are you putting in additional testimony on this?
I did. I thought I sent it around, but I can send it. It was rather long. And I think, you know, I think the other thing that's really important for us to cover is UDAP and the UDAP designation and why this site is not appropriate for it. I don't know if Karen Asner's on, but I know she had done some initial research into that. But I think that's something else worth raising. But I know today was the last day to submit testimony. I included it in my
Isn't it
testimony.
tomorrow, Barry? Isn't it tomorrow?
It's today.
Audrey, Jose, is it today or tomorrow? Because the meeting's on the 18th, right? So I think we have until.
Right, you're right. I forgot that it got postponed.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because I haven't submitted mine yet. So.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry, that was
Andre, so you're going to make those points in your submission?
The points about supportive housing,
Yeah,
or
about
no, I had not
and
intended.
UDAP and the UDAP designation.
Yeah, I
Because
did.
you were concerned about the UDAP designation.
Yeah, I am concerned, and I think that that was one of the questions that we heard again from one of the commissioners. So I think there's clearly a concern about it, and I agree with you, Barry, that there was some confusion on the part of the commissioners about some of the things that we were saying, and I think it's partly because of the overall confusing way this project has been rolled out. I think a similar problem came up with some of the disposition questions and whether or not the project had to follow the procedures laid out in the state the statute for health and hospitals, or ULERP, and whether or not but I think the UDAP is key. I plan to talk about the UDAP.
Yeah, I was gonna say on this, I did add, this is the one, like, I'm good at programming, but policies I'm a little bit more weaker on. So I tried to keep what I put on UDAP to be reflective of what I knew. But please check me on this one, because I felt all right, but I feel weird when I'm not at 100% on things. So if you don't mind just checking me and let me know if I did okay.
Oh
That
yeah,
was the
no,
only one that, yeah.
I'm going to read this over. Thank you so much for sending this out to us. I had no idea that you'd received the questions, and so I think this is fantastic. I agree with Barry that, and that this is really, really useful. And I can add to some of the supportive sites on this in my testimony. And I would be less concerned about the UDAP because I think Karen has written a lot. I know she submitted testimony, but she would really be the one. She looked closely into the language of the statute. But, it goes back to this question that Barry, we've been talking about. It seems like UDAP is often, at least within, I don't know, the past 5 or 10 years, granted on the basis of underutilization. That's where I've seen it. That's the word I've seen used actually in a Flushing project. And I think that's their basis of it. Now, Karen looked into the exact language of the statute, and that is, I don't think it's there, or it doesn't meet the requirements of the statute. I think it's like there are a few different requirements. So underutilization is just one of a list of 3 or 4 requirements. But I think the big issue here is that without a UDAP, this project does not get the tax breaks that it requires in order to move forward with. It's a key question.
Right on. Perfect. Nice. So that's all I have at the moment in terms of 727. Like I said, I posted a copy of the testimony I sent out. But if anybody also just wants their own copy, reach out to me and I'll happily send it to you too.
Could we send a notice to the people on the community board mailing list that tomorrow is the last day to submit a testimony with the
Absolutely.
link?
Yeah, will do.
I have to. Do you have the link? Because I've been meaning to find. I think Audrey sent it to me twice already. Or
Do you guys
Jose.
know what time? Sorry to interrupt, but do you guys know what time is the last time to submit testimony tomorrow?
Hi, let me double check. But I think it is midnight. I will pull up the email that I sent to you, Andres, and the board, and look for that in the chat in a second.
Thank you, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you.
Please. Let me pull this one up. All right. The next item I have is for Hancock Place deed modification. This one's mostly an update. So we had received back in the end of October an application for a deed modification over at 4 Hancock Place. This is going to be over at 124th and Hancock. And it's not just one location, it's technically two. It's 4 Hancock and 6 Hancock. Part of the issue here is 6 Hancock is an old firehouse that was built way over 100 years ago as part of the City Beautiful initiative from that time. The idea was if you create beautiful civic buildings, then you will have you'll have a nicer environment. People will be nicer in that environment, and so that was the idea. Let's have nice things. So when this particular property was sold, there was a restriction that was added to the deed in which both 4 and 6 Hancock were sold to George Faison, who has turned 6 Hancock into a theater, and it holds seating, and it's a really beautiful building for anybody who hasn't walked by it yet. And so the update that we're getting after reaching out to some of our colleagues from the Manhattan Borough President Office is that as of this moment, we pretty much have to wait for DCAS to give us the green light to start the process. And they still are in the review process of this application. Once they reviewed it, we'll get notification to start our process, and that's going to be when we could hold our public hearing, when we could start doing our part in terms of reviewing this particular site. Part of the restriction on this site is that you cannot demolish that building to build an entirely new building using both of the property lots that are there. You may be able to add on to it. So maybe I could add on to the existing firehouse and do something like that, but I cannot tear down the firehouse in order to flip it and make a profit, essentially, which is what the deed restriction is there for. And so because this person is looking to flip that restriction, that's going to be the conversation. So more to come on that once we have more. The big topic of conversation, and it's the last discussion of the agenda, is our community planning fellow. David and I have been meeting with Cameron and Arnav, who has been presenting to us like his first draft of some of the things he's been working on, and he's been doing a fantastic job. He's still getting a lot of feedback from us. But one of the things, and David, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but one of the things that we're looking to discuss is one of the things that Arnav had done was he kind of like pre-selected 5 buildings or 5 development plans that have occurred over a long period of time because he selected certain interesting buildings. And then did assessments off of those buildings to come up with his data. Now, part of the problem was because he didn't have cultural context, he used buildings like 3333 and some others, which well intended, but because he didn't have that background, he kind of picked some of these bigger developments over a period of a very long time. And so part of the discussion from us is he needs 5 buildings or 5 projects that he could look at and start pulling data from those in terms of
Well,
what he. Yeah, please,
yeah,
Dave.
if I may, Mateen, the project is about trying to help us think about what is truly affordable housing within the district, so that when we respond to your ULURP applications and other situations, we can have an intelligent way of discussing that issue. And the idea of having these comparison buildings, it's really to give a sense within this discussion of affordability, how the most recent projects in our district how affordable those projects are, or how unaffordable those projects are. So the question is, what do you what kind of how do you determine what those projects are? Are they the last five? And I'm not sure where it's. I mean, we did talk about the number five, but I don't think it has to be five. Are they the last series of projects that got a certificate of occupancy? Should they be the most recent five projects that have gone into development? Should there be another way of doing this? But again, the issue is trying to determine what is truly affordable housing and how the needs of Community Board 9 have not been met in recent developments. So we weren't quite sure what the best way of choosing those projects were, and we said we would go back to the committee and see if people had some interesting ideas about that. I hope between the two of us, we were pretty good about explaining what this issue is. If not, people should ask us questions. Okay, it doesn't appear, Mateen, that a lot of people are jumping in on this. And if not, I mean, that's fine too. You and I can go back to Arnav and discuss it with him and Cameron.
Yeah, because I know we had certain buildings in mind, but yeah, I think we wanted to check in here first.
Yeah. This is and would it help if you had a comparison of different types of buildings, say an HDFC, a private co-op, and plus the new development, because you're trying to demonstrate what is truly affordable and also what the community feels is truly affordable. I mean, there are two perspectives.
Yeah,
you have the developers and you have the community, so truly affordable means different things to both groups.
Just to be clear, Arnav is doing his own analysis on what is affordable, and when he's looking at census data and the income levels that are reported in census data, and the questions of whether it's worth thinking about affordability in terms of census tracts and in terms of neighborhoods, other ways of looking at it. But what this conversation is about is, as part of that report, he wants to establish that whatever number he arrives at as truly affordable housing, those needs have not been met. And we can show this by just looking at these projects over here. So the question is, how do you determine what these projects are over here that demonstrate?
Yeah, there needs to be like a connecting variable. Like for example, are we looking at just projects that have gone through ULURP, for example? And projects that have received subsidy, how much subsidy have they received versus how much affordable housing got, what was the output in terms, but that's part of the main thing is trying to figure out exactly which variable to look at to then pick the five buildings. But I think for us, in terms of the affordability, we're kind of looking at, in terms of like subsidy, how much taxpayer dollars is being used versus how much we're getting. And whether the public process might be something that either hurts or helps, which is part of what we're trying to find. But I do like that Barry pointed out PS 186. I definitely had that one on the list. That one's a good one. Yeah, yeah. In terms of what makes these 5 buildings, yeah, or set of buildings, depending on the data set. Yeah, for further topic.
All right.
Yeah. All right. What I'd say is like even if something comes to you even after this as we're talking, like definitely reach out, send us stuff because it all helps. Um, I think we might even want to hit up Sean Rickenbacker as well from City College. They might have 5 that we can look at as well. Uh, right on.
Um,
Mhm.
Just on this, going back to the HPC, it actually shouldn't be HPD zoning, it should be DCP zoning 101 training. Are you going to send a link to the training that youth did we talk about that? I think we briefly mentioned it.
So Jose put the link in the information on the
Okay.
chat, and then I
Okay.
also have it on the community alerts.
Okay, terrific. Then we've covered all that stuff.
Sweet. All right. That'll conclude the new business that I have, unless anybody says otherwise. Uh, in terms of old business, as far as I know, I don't have any updates on RKO. Does anybody here have any updates on that?
I saw that Walter keeps reaching out and not getting a response from Ashkenazi. I don't know, Barry, if you've heard from them at all, or I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Yeah, we could follow up more because I haven't heard anything, and usually if I do hear something, it's from Walter. All right. Is there any legislation that we should be watching that anybody wants to make aware of? I know we have a few that we're looking on the state side. Um, but was there also anything that we should be looking at coming up or that has been recently proposed that we should add? All right. Hearing any-
Anita pointed out that Councilmember Abreu submitted a dam tax extension, legislation for the dam tax extension. Where am I seeing that? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, that's right. I need to send an email about that.
So this would be an abatement on taxes that HDFC, I haven't had a chance to look at this. I think it's called, wait, no, this is separate. Resolution number 9. So something to keep in mind. I think this is Barry, you might know a bit more about this. I think this is the law being pushed by the HDFC coalition, if I'm not mistaken, to extend the dam tax, which is set to sunset in 2029.
That was Senator Jackson and Al Taylor's bill in Albany, I think. So this would be something different, I think.
I think it's a tax exemption, Andres. Division of Alternative Management Program tax exemptions poses a cap on assessed value of building under the condition remains income restricted HDFC cooperative building during the tax exemption period. So it appears to me to be an extension of that.
Well, so just so that folks are aware, the two are linked, right? So Senator Jackson's, so the dam tax is supposed to expire in in 2029. That's what's motivating a lot of this.
Right.
And that would result in effectively much higher taxes on HDFCs than they are used to paying, because they, were formerly city owned, and so returning them to the tax rolls at all was a big deal. I think that the Senator Jackson's bill would kind of prevent HPD from not renewing it, if memory serves. I'd have to look again and also clarify some additional rights that HDFCs have. But it sounds like, and I haven't looked at the bill, it sounds like Sean Abreu's bill would just extend the existing tax credits past 2029, the tax abatements, sorry.
I think, in fact, it's
Okay.
just a call for the city council to support the New York State legislature's
Oh.
passing
It's a
Taylor
home,
and
it's a
Jackson.
home, it's a home rule message then to like Albany, like, it's a reso in support of a pending piece of state legislation that's relevant to the city.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just, yeah,
Right.
it's a supportive call.
Yeah, it says it resolved the council calls on New York State legislature to pass.
Yeah,
Finance
okay.
bill.
Yeah, I pasted the language from the resolution onto that horribly, but I'll find out something that's better looking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of developments we're watching, so there was three that was brought to our attention by Signy, so I've added those. I have 3577 Broadway. Doing just brief searches on each one of them. This has a very high complaint volume with HBD. It seems like it's very active from what I'm seeing. I think there's been over 1,000 complaints that's been lodged in total, with over 300 active violations.
Yeah,
Um,
just may I just read what Signy wrote about this? She
yes,
said
please. Yeah.
the businesses, this is 3577 Broadway, the businesses have all slowly started to close. I think we brought this up a while back, question mark. Quick search didn't reveal any permits or news on the site, but wondering if the hive mind has heard or seen anything of interest.
Yeah. No, and if not, this is definitely a good one to look out for. I also have the 337 Convent Avenue. This one is a weird one. I mean, just kind of doing a search. I mean, if I kind of had to guess, it kind of looks like the owners almost deliberately trying to let the maintenance go bad so that they can forego like a buy kind of like a buy to flip the property. But I'm purely speculation just based on like the 5 seconds I took a look at this particular site.
What's the address?
This is 337 Convent Avenue.
Called the Ali Fournay Center building.
Oh, that's been purchased by a LGBTQ homeless youth nonprofit to be used as like transitional housing, if memory serves. But that might be something to watch. Yeah. Mateen, I have a question about that first building you mentioned. Was that the
Yes.
building of the gentleman who came to a meeting maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago to talk about the problems in his building? Was that the building he was talking about?
Mm,
No, I don't.
No, I think this was along one of the numbered streets between Amsterdam and no, between Broadway and Riverside or Amsterdam and Broadway.
No, I think it was on I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was on the corner of Broadway and one of those streets. But anyway, okay, thank you. That was just my question.
Yeah.
You're talking about the building where the facade was falling off, Barry?
Boy, that's not specific enough, sadly. I don't remember candidly. I'll have to go through
Okay.
my notes from the meeting.
Okay.
Same. Yeah, I can go back because I do keep a log. And then what I'll do is for the next meeting, I'll make sure to include all these together in addition with the legislations. The last one I have is 537-539 150th Street.
West
Uh, it-
150. Yeah.
yeah, it seems like here there's been reports of after hours construction. I did see that there was a partial vacate order because the original complaint had somebody living in the basement, perhaps I mean the report was illegal SRO slash hotel, and it seems like that was founded by DOB, so they issued that vacate order in 2023, and that's about as much as I've found about that
Well,
particular building.
well, just to add to that, Signe, when she was asking us to look into this, wrote rent stabilized building that's going into receivership, along with 8 other buildings. I think the landlord is City Skyline Realty. Many of those other buildings are in our community board district as well, hoping to get input from some tenants to ensure they know what is happening. So I think she's concerned that the tenants in that building or buildings know their rights and what's going on with the receivership. I'm not sure how we deal with that. I mean, is there any way of reaching out and
Hiring near the building, we're asking maybe we could do a mailing would be another option. Like we could mail the units, so something to think about.
yeah, I think we have a bad connection, Barry.
Yeah, it kind of came in a little choppy.
Oh, hold on.
Saying that the board could send mail to the tenants.
Mm. You mean like, well, we need apartment numbers, I guess, or something.
Sure, but just say current resident and like look at the apartment numbers listed in. Yeah, I think we could do it, but happy to talk more offline.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Right on. All right. So those are the ones that I got.
Mateen, did you say the first address that Signe mentions was 3537
No,
Broadway?
3577.
35.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. All right. And then if there's any other developments we should be watching, definitely let us know so we could add that to the list as well. Public member updates. Liz, Barry, is there anything new that you'd like to announce?
That we haven't already covered. Oh, the one
Right.
thing I would add, and I meant to raise this when we were talking about the zoning training, we really should follow up with Ophelia at the Department of Buildings, because they also offered a slightly different training, not slightly, like significantly different training about how community boards can use the Department of Buildings tools, and the processes they have there. And so I think we should take them up on that.
I would love to. I think that's a great idea. Who is it that we should be contacting?
Ophelia Phipps, Eutha has a very good
Okay.
relationship with her. She was the board's like designated, community outreach person from DOB. She's now the head of community affairs at DOB, so she's got some, like levers to pull, but she still takes care of us sometimes when we really need something from the DOB.
Okay, great.
Right on. I love that. Yeah, no, and having DOB connected is a good one too. Nice.
I haven't looked at 142nd Street. in Riverside Drive in a while, so I'm just opening up the DOB files now to see if there's any filings, but let me get back to you.
Cool, no worries. All right. In terms of NYCHA updates, I don't have very
Well,
much.
wait. That's
Oh,
Teresa.
sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. Teresa, were you able to attend the WeAct NYCHA working group?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's just that Marcelli, she's trying to get a group together to go up to the polo grounds, but they want to get their hands dirty in moving garbage. You know, because the polo grounds is really not a safe haven. But she wanted to get together and go up there and see how the ins and outs are going about up there, and she had a pretty good audience. It's pretty decent. But she's relatively new in what she's doing, you know, so she's just garnering a lot of people, and everybody that was on was just giving up a lot of grievances about what's transpiring, you
Oh
know.
man.
Yeah. So we're supposed to be meeting up again. She's been sending out emails because she wanted pictures of garbage in front of the buildings and things like that, because the polo grounds is really like, wow. It's like
Yeah.
well, and they wanted to have a training up there on the rad and the pack. I opt out because up there is kind of bad. At least I'm down here on Hancock and Amsterdam. It's not too bad. So yeah, so we're trying to get together and develop some groups
Right on.
and hit different housing projects and see how their residents association is going on, and give us updates on things of that nature.
Damn.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, no, I would say, and I'm assuming WeAct still has connections, but in case they don't, I would say like if they're having trouble or they don't know how to reach out to certain associations,
Right.
I would definitely recommend that they be in touch with my former team, Office of Public-Private Partnerships, only because they could help navigate some of the stuff, and be able to provide contact lists, being able to reach out, make a connection. That's kind of like their bread and butter.
Right.
But again, it depends on how you see things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Marcelli, she's relatively new. She says she's been there about a year. So, like I said, she's trying to gather up people and go forward. But she's pretty innovative in what she's doing. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, no,
Thanks, Teresa.
yeah.
But it was a lot of people on, just complaining about their developments, what NYCHA is not doing. Me myself, I told them, I said I'm going to continue to poke the bear, because when they see me coming, it's like, oh, everybody starts gathering, because a lot of people haven't been getting heat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That heat has been relatively one of the biggest problems since this frigid weather. Because even me, I think it was, matter of fact, it was New Year's. The heat wasn't adequate in my apartment. So I started calling over everybody. I called Mecca, what's the assemblyman? Mecca Lasser?
Micah.
Micah.
Yeah.
I got in touch with Yusuf Salim. I called Senator, what is it, Espaillat? Espaillat. I got in touch with him. One of his constituents there, her name was Shauna. She had gotten back to me and she said, I'll work with you. I got heat.
Good.
Heat was relevant. It
Nice.
was so much. I had to open up the windows. But
I
I
like
really
to hear that.
appreciate it. So, like I said, I'm getting a little more involved in those who are advocating for where they live in NYCHA, because we have to hold NYCHA, accountable. And this rad pack thing that they got going, it's not really conducive for most tenants, because a lot of tenants don't know the intricacies about rad and pack, and it's not what people want. They want to stay with Section 9. So they want, like I said, they want to do a training class to enlighten people about what's transpired, because these developers are going to come up in here, and I don't know why NYCHA can't just take responsibility for themselves. They're not getting funded too much with the federal government. And like you were, like you had said, Mateen, the monies that are coming in, so they say, it's just enough for the repairs that from the rent. But as far as I'm concerned, it's hogwash.
Yeah.
Hogwash.
No,
You just got to stay on these people in NYCHA's case, because, like I said, once you start, poking the bear, it seems like you start getting responses. So, like I said, to the people in NYCHA, you got to advocate for yourself, because nobody's coming to save you.
yeah, I would share that sentiment. That's usually kind of how I've seen nature respond, is depending on who's the loudest, you see things
Exactly.
moving.
And well, like I said, I try to be as reserved as possible, but when it comes to my living, I'm gonna shout out. I'm gonna make some noise.
Right
So
on.
yeah, so with that in, like I said, Marcella, she's good at what she's doing, and for her to be in the position that she's in for a year, she's gonna do well. And I'm gonna work with her.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's about that.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Teresa.
Sure.
Liz, I saw your hand up.
Just quickly, I looked up 142nd Street, and the only change that's happened is 631 West 142 is now owned by a company called Unique Away, and they are like Airbnb. So for anyone that knows that block as intimately as I do, there was a holdout on that block, blocking the developer from tearing half of the block down. She passed, and I assumed that the developer would snatch up that building and then buy the building that they used to own next to it, and then be able to demolish 3 more buildings in the row. But Unique Away owns 631, and they have DOB permits to fix it up.
Interesting.
No other movement on any of the properties owned by the developer in Acris.
Right on. Thank you so much, Liz. And so I think the last thing I had 2 last things. I think um, oh man, now that we don't have Michael, does anybody have updates about the Morningside Heights Community Coalition?
That was Michael's.
Yeah, that was his baby. Oh man. All right, we may need to talk about designating somebody. Just so we're able to know what's going on there. Or pulling Michael. Okay. So for now, I'll kind of leave that blank. I'll actually reach out to Michael after this to see if there are any updates, and I could include that at the next meeting for actionable items or for the updates. And then lastly, I have Till, which I think we spoke about a little bit in the meeting, but do we have any additional Till updates besides the bills? Okay. So with that, we don't have any action items. Are we, are we open to adjourn?
Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion.
So moved. Seconded.
All right.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All right. So
Wait, I think I'm voting against. No, just kidding.
David,
but,
you're leaving the country. When are you leaving the country, David?
Well,
everyone.
if I voted against the adjournment, I was going to have to leave in the next 10 minutes. But Saturday.
David got jokes.
Hmm.
All right.
So,
when are you leaving?
I'm leaving on Saturday for 2 weeks.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Safe journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bettine, you and I should stay on for just 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thanks, everyone. This was a good meeting.
Okay,
It was a very good meeting.
Good night, everyone. Have a
Good
safe trip.
night.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
So Bettine, we need to turn off the recording and copy the chat, and I'm not sure, quite frankly, how to do either of those two things.
Here we go.